Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the co-founder of Digital Leadership Associates. I'm also the co-author of the book, Social Selling, Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. With me today, I've got Sahil Mansuri from Bovada. And we're going to talk about salespeople and rating salespeople today. So before we go any further, Sahil, just let everybody know where they can get hold of you.
Thanks, Tim. Best way to get a hold of me, you can find our website at bravado.me, or you can find me on Twitter at svmansuri.
Good, excellent. So just some context about this discussion. I was in a speaker lounge at a sales hacker conference, and there was this discussion going on about everyday sales and the way that things are going within social selling. And someone said, why is there not like a website somewhere where you can rate salespeople, just like there is on TripAdvisor or on Uber or on eBay or something like that? So we as salespeople can actually then go out into the open world and talk to customers and go and see them and say, look, I'm a 5-star salesman, trust me. Anyway, I was sitting, this discussion was going on, and Max from Sales Hacker said, I've got a mate that actually is doing this already. And here we are. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's about how Bovada and the product allows you to ultimately to rate salespeople. But Sahil, give us your context and your journey, because I think it's really important for people to understand that journey. Because you've been a salesperson, you've managed salespeople, and you came up with an amazing way of actually recruiting salespeople as well, which is worth sharing.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So I guess, for starters, I spent the first 7 years of my career both as an individual quota-carrying sales rep and later as a leader and builder of sales teams. But it was only after I left sales that I realized how frustrating the sales process can be. Once I found myself into the shoes of being a technology buyer, I started getting bombarded by tons of unsolicited cold emails, cold calls, etc. And it was extremely difficult for me to discern who actually knew what they were talking about and who was just sending me templated outreach. Someone had read HubSpot's, 3 cold emails that are guaranteed to get a warm response or something.
I'm always getting those ones.
All right. And so I grew increasingly frustrated with how sales was being done and thought to myself, right, as a buyer, what I really want to know is which salespeople know how to talk about my business problems, who has experience in selling to similar companies as myself, and who are the actual trusted advisors who can offer real solutions. And I thought, well, the only people who know the answers to those questions are the previous customers of that salesperson themselves. And so, this kind of kernel came into our head. You mentioned recruiting, and I think that's another really interesting angle. We spent a lot of time thinking, well, right, a resume is just self-reported, right? All the information that you can find about a salesperson is self-reported, either on LinkedIn or on their CV. There's no way to actually validate which salespeople have closed which deals, which salespeople have a track record of successfully, delighting customers, of being truly consultative in their approach. And so we thought there has to be a way that we can take the feedback that customers have, the track record that a salesperson has built over their career, and be able to represent that somewhere so that you, as a salesperson, you're not starting from zero with every meeting, and instead can rely on your track record of success in order to be able to open doors in the future. And
we talked when we prepped this around the fact that as a salesperson, when you go from job to job, you in effect have to start from zero. Whereas you're building up this track record, and as you move roles, what would be really good is if you can actually take that track record and show that immediately to your clients and say, I have a track record in helping people.
That's right. Well, I mean, if you think about other industries as an analog, let's look at designers. Designers, much like salespeople, are notoriously difficult to recruit and hire Because just like with the context of sales, if I'm really good at selling one product in one industry at one company, that means something, but it's hard to evaluate in the context of an interview whether I'm going to be able to translate those skills over to my next job. And so when you land in a new job, you don't have any customer testimonials, you don't have any references, you don't have a social network, as you know. And so you end up in a situation where you're unable to rely on anything, and you basically are starting from zero again. And so, this problem got solved for designers by sites like Behance and Dribbble, which are out there and allowing designers to create a portfolio of work that they have across their entire career. So as they go from project to project, as they go from job to job, they're able to showcase and highlight the work that they've previously done in order to build a reputation and a credibility for themselves. The same thing happens with engineers when you look at, sites like Stack Overflow and GitHub, where engineers are able to build reputations for themselves based on the work that they have done previously. And so for us, we're just trying to bring that same context to sales. But for a salesperson, the work product that you do is nothing more than the reputation you build with your customers. And so that's the core of what we're trying to focus on, which is which customers are willing to endorse you, which customers are willing to support you.
Because you talked about what you called account-based hiring, which is that when you were hiring salespeople, you got a reputation for hiring good salespeople. And people were saying, how do you do that? And what you did was you said, forget the CV, just give me the names of 5 customers that you've worked with. And you basically got on the phone and you rang those up and said, I'm thinking of hiring Tim Hughes. He says he puts you down as a customer of his. What do you think about him?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, as a salesperson, if you can get a customer to be willing to get on the phone with a hiring manager and say, and basically endorse you and say, hey, I would do business with this person again, there's nothing more that I need as a VP of sales to be able to make a decision as to whether I want to hire that person or not, right? I mean, the thing that's interesting is that, and we saw this in the early stages of our product development last year, we found that salespeople who were really great, like the truly exceptional salespeople, the ones who are on top of the leaderboard month after month, the ones who had built great brands and reputations for themselves, they were able to get a line around the block of customers who are willing to say, hey, I really like working with Tim. Tim's awesome. I would do business with Tim again in a heartbeat. And then you compare that to salespeople who are not so customer centric, who are not as focused around, who are more transactional in their approach. And they struggle to get anyone of any context, especially senior folks, especially from larger companies, to be willing to do that. And so it became a really nice litmus test to be able to ask a salesperson up front, say, hey, before we even go through the interview process, because as I'm sure you know, Tim, salespeople are all really good at interviewing. Of course they are, right? They're salespeople. They're good at selling, right? And so of course they know how to sell themselves. And so what we did is we said, okay, right, I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from your customers. What do your customers have to say about having done business with you? And all of a sudden, all of the salespeople who are really, really, bold and confident started cowering when they realized that their track record would precede them. There is no consequence these days, in the age of sales automation, to be able to send 1,000 cold emails, sit there with a dialer software and make 1,000 phone calls and spam the world with messaging. But because of that, I think that we've gone away from a world of warm intros, a world of reputation, a world of social selling, and now it's coming back around in vogue, and I think it's more powerful and important than ever. So, we're trying to facilitate that and say, hey, right, would your customers work with you again? If you landed at this job, would they be willing to take a meeting from you again? The answer to that question is yes. Then come on board. I'd love to work with a seller like that.
And I think I think it's great the fact that that there needs to be a mechanism really to how do we effectively measure the ability of a salesperson and that track record. And really the only people that can do that are not our managers, because actually, when I look at a salesperson, it's about whether they can close the deal, and the fact that they went and sat in the car park for 3 days to push the purchase order through and stuff like that. And that's the sort of the hero stuff. But actually, the customers don't want to hear about that. That's the wrong side of the fence. What they want is to know is the fact that the person is actually providing them with insight, telling them things that they don't know, sorting out their issues and being there and being trustworthy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, there was a fascinating conversation that I had with about 250, 300 sales leaders when we were initially kind of testing out and looking for product market fit. I asked a bunch of sales leaders, what are the top 3 attributes that your best salespeople have? What are the things that you hire for? And I got a whole bunch of answers that revolved around, someone who's really aggressive, and someone who it won't take no for an answer, and is persistent and is a former athlete, somebody who's extremely extroverted, someone with strong personality or humor and this and that, right? And then we went on for about 20, 30 minutes. And then after I asked, well, what would your customers say is the best attribute of your best salespeople? Who do your customers want to buy from? And all of a sudden the adjectives changed. All of a sudden it was like, oh, they want someone who's like super consultative, and they want someone who's super trustworthy, and they want someone who's really technical, and someone who knows their product, and someone who knows the competitive landscape, and someone who and I was like, okay, there's a disconnect here. We as sales leaders have this perception that an ideal salesperson is this extroverted, ex-jock who comes in and pounds the phone and has this like very bro-y sort of vibe about them. And many sales teams are made like that. While meanwhile, customers are saying, well, I want to talk to someone who's technical and more of a project manager / product manager, as opposed to someone who's like a classic salesperson. And so when we look at the future of sales, it is our belief here at Bravado that the future of sales is one where the reputation of a salesperson is everything. And the reputation of a salesperson is going to be a portmanteau of their credibility, their trustworthiness, and their domain expertise. And the only people who are able to evaluate whether a salesperson has those attributes or not are their customers. I find it, in fact, Tim, I find it kind of strange that we haven't gotten to this world already, that we haven't gotten to a place where the first thing we do is talk to our customers and say, what kind of salespeople do you want to buy from? What are the things that you are looking for in order to help you make a decision in this industry, in this product landscape? Get their feedback, and then go hire the people that look like that. Like, how have we not done that? We do that with everything else. We do that when we're building the product. Why don't we do that when we figure out who's selling the product too? Doesn't make sense to me.
I agree. So let's talk about Bovada. So I've actually used the product, and I must admit it's really easy to use. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, it's got a very you take the user interface, it steps you through, right? Do this, okay? Do that. Go away and get your the things from the customers, pin them up, and it is very, very easy to step through. So let's talk about Bovado and how you see it plays from a social selling perspective.
Yeah, great. I mean, before I actually answer that, I have a question for you, Tim, actually.
Okay,
so I noticed something really interesting. So I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I noticed that on LinkedIn, you have almost 50 testimonials or endorsements that you've received, recommendations from folks. First of all, how did you get, and I've never seen somebody with that many, to be honest with you. I'm really curious how you got them. And secondly, I'm really curious how you use them.
So I actually have a friend who's a LinkedIn trainer, and he's got 500.
Wow.
And he actually uses that as his that's his strap line to people. It says, and which is a really confident thing to say, you know, in terms of you don't need to know what I do or what I'm good at, or, you know, I'm not, you know, I've got 500 recommendations. My view is I just ask for people for the recommendations over time. And I think, you know, last time I talked to a recruiter, which must have been a few years ago now, they were saying you need to be having like 5 or 7 on your LinkedIn profile nowadays to be credible. I think people go through through a time of getting them. So I'm doing a lot of training with people at the moment, where and you'll see that they've got a whole load around 2015 or something like that, because they've decided to go out and do that in 2015, but they're not ones that are up to date. And always the thing that we always tell people is don't write them yourself. Or I mean, there's one sales leader there where he just said, Tim, you write it and I'll just cut and paste it. And it was, and I didn't really want to do that, but it was the only way that I was going to get one from him. Mm-hmm. Whereas Kelvin Lee from Thomson Reuters, you know, he wrote it, and he's just written an amazing one of, like, you know, Tim walks into a room and within 5 minutes you've got 100 people in the room that are complete advocates of social selling. And it's not something that I would write, because as a Brit, I'm a bit modest and say, you know, I walked in the room and it was all right, and I talked a bit, but, you know, I'm a bit average, because that's what we tend to do in the United Kingdom. That's kind of our culture. But yeah, it's important, and I really like the fact that you're kind of building on that within the platform.
That's right.
But it was interesting, because I actually asked a couple of people, and they actually wrote I actually went back to Kelvin Lee at Thomson Reuters and asked him that, and he actually only wrote like a couple of lines. And it may be just purely that the platform is new. That Neil Schaefer, I asked one from him. And one of the customers that we've just signed, where we're rolling out a social selling program. But, you know, they came back within 24 hours.
That's right. And so let's talk about that, what you just said, because I think that's the core of what we're focused on at Bravado as well. You just said something really interesting, which is, like, you yourself are being modest, right? But your customers are speaking for you. Which signal in the market is more important? Is it more important that you yourself are able to be, you know, braggadocious about yourself, or is it the confidence that you get from knowing that other people are willing to stick up for you? And I think that's the thing that we're really focused on at Bravado, is that salespeople have always been good at selling themselves. In fact, this is how, you know, to take one step back, the relationship between buyers and sellers is getting worse every day. And buyers are getting increasingly frustrated with the tactics, and I use the term tactics here very intentionally, the tactics that are being used against them. You know, faux personalization of email, you know, weaponization of the spam cannon. You know, buyers are getting inundated and swamped with unsolicited outreach from people that they don't know, they don't trust, and that they know are just in it for themselves. And so what we are trying to do is to restore back a world where people are able to build reputations based on the success and satisfaction of their customers, then take that reputation and leverage it in order to be able to go and close their next deal. And so our entire thought as a company is the most powerful thing in sales is a referral, right? Word of mouth, social selling, and referrals are the most powerful thing. There is not a single sales team that will say that referrals are not their best source of new leads. But how are we going to go about getting those referrals? Salespeople are scared to ask their customers for testimonials and referrals. And so we've built a platform that makes it extremely easy for salespeople to be able to go out and collect these testimonials, makes it really fast and simple for customers to give those. And then instead of it being buried at the bottom of someone's LinkedIn profile where, you know, someone would need to dig down in order to find it, we've actually elevated that particular component and put it front and center, because it's our belief that it's the most important thing for any seller. So we're not really, you know, we're not being competitive with LinkedIn. All we're doing is saying, right, LinkedIn is always going to be this incredibly powerful platform that exists. We want to capture just one component of what you typically have on LinkedIn for salespeople, which are customer testimonials. Many salespeople don't even have a lot of those. Yep. And be able to take that and make that the centerpiece of your reputation as a salesperson that you can take with you from deal to deal, from meeting to meeting, and then even job to job.
Yeah, I think in the way that it's built, it's very easy to do that. I mean, one of the things I haven't done yet, which I know that you do on your emails, is that your part of the platform enables you to take a quote and actually use it as your email signature file. Mm-hmm. So in a way, you know, it's Tim Hughes, co-founder, Digital Leadership Associates, telephone number, and this is what Kelvin Lee said at Thomson Reuters says about him. And I think that's very powerful. Again, so I tell people a lot that the Queen of England never introduces herself because everybody knows that she's the Queen of England. So she never has to go in and say I'm the Queen. Everybody knows that. And what we sometimes do is that we are too worried that people. Well, we need the confidence to be able to go into meetings and go to people and say, not arrogance, but confidence to say, you know, I know that I can actually increase. I know that I can go into most sales organizations and increase their incremental revenue by 20-30%. But everybody's saying that there's an ROI, and everybody's kind of saying that they can do that. But actually having someone as an advocate from the other side of the fence, confirming this person can say can do what they say they can do, I think is very powerful.
I'll tell you an interesting story on just that very same trend, Tim. I had a conversation with a former sales leader at Marketo.
Yeah.
And he told me that when initially Marketo was in a very tight competition with Eloqua and with HubSpot and with Pardot and Acton and these other competitors, they realized actually that the best sales pitch they could give was to collect customer testimonials. They had emails, they had handwritten notes, they had things on LinkedIn, they had it in a bunch of different places. And they would bind it together into like a little packet of like customer testimonials. And they would send that off in advance of the meeting.
Right.
And what they would say in the email is they would say, look, HubSpot's going to give you their pitch, Pardot's going to give you their pitch, Eloqua is going to give you their pitch, and we're going to give you our pitch. Mm-hmm. And that's all it is. It's just us talking. But here's the voice of our customers talking. Here's what happens not the day before you sign the contract, but 2 years after you sign the contract. 3 years after you've been using the platform, here's what our customers have to say about working with us. And they realized that when they did that, their win rate went up over 25%. And wow. So it was like this incredibly, and of course, Tim, none of this is surprising to you. You're the master of social selling. You understand this, but the fact that this had been happening almost 7 years ago, and now we're in a world today where these things are still not organized. There's still no centralized platform where salespeople can get customer testimonials, and in a world where we are increasingly being measured not by product differentiation, because there's a lot of products that do the same thing, but we're being measured by service differentiation, and we're being measured by our trustworthiness, our responsiveness, our credibility, our ability to be consultative and actually create value outside of just being able to ship some product with its code off to a customer. You know, that becomes increasingly more powerful. And so we're hoping to be the place that allows salespeople to actually come in and establish that reputation and be able to leverage it so that they can actually stand out. You mentioned the email signature tool. It's one of many that we are coming out with in order to be able to put the power of your customer's words in action.
So in terms of where are you at the moment in terms of the development of Bovado and where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, great question. So at the moment, we have we had kind of two paths that we could have taken. We had a path where we could have tried to go for like hyper growth and get every single salesperson on here and try to build this into a thing that everybody uses. The problem with that is that not every salesperson is actually trustworthy. Not every salesperson is credible. And so we thought, well, rather than just try to do something that's flashy, let's try to do something that's truly meaningful. So we are a customer-powered network. What does that mean? What that means is that in order to join Bravado, you have to get a customer to endorse you, to recommend you.
Yep.
And then once you have a customer who recommends you, that's what unlocks your membership. And then you can go off and start building your reputation on here. What's coming next is that we're building effectively, think of it like a FICO score for salespeople, where based on the interactions and deals that they've had in the past, they're able to get some sort of a credibility score in terms of their expertise in selling to certain industries, in terms of selling to certain buyer personas, in terms of selling certain types of products in certain domains. And so we're effectively capturing a lot of data on the back end of which clients a salesperson has closed in the past and who's willing to endorse them, and then take those testimonials and those clients and be able to credential salespeople and say, right, this is someone who's an expert at selling lead scoring software. This is somebody who's an expert in marketing automation. This is somebody that CEOs at Fortune 500 companies really trust, so that when they're approaching future customers, they already have that reputation and that track record. I mean, you can't walk into a bank and get a loan without someone checking your FICO score. In the same way, we imagine in the future, you can't walk into a meeting with a customer without them checking your Bravado score.
Right. And I get that. And I think, that there is an awful lot of people being manipulative in the way that they're trying to sell. And when I found out about you guys at the Sales Hacker conference that I spoke in London, one of the people that was on just before me was basically a person that was telling people how to write emails that would get opened. And what they were just trying to do was just showing manipulative ways of getting, of writing titles that would get, writing titles that had nothing to do with the product or anything, like, you need to pick your kid up from school or something like that, because it would just get open rates, and all you're going and it just annoys people. And I think we all have to, as salespeople, I wrote an article recently about, I think we're entering the golden age of sales, because we actually have the ability to sell more, and I don't like the term, but add value, which is help and inspire people. And I think we have to rise above all that sort of manipulative hacking sort of thing that's going on kind of underneath us, that obviously works for people. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. But I think there's a level of us that want to kind of rise above that.
That's right. I mean, again, I want to reiterate a point that I think is central to all of this, which is that the relationship between technology buyers and sellers has just never been worse. And you see it on LinkedIn with buyers posting screenshots of emails that they've received from salespeople that are either tricky or are, unpersonalized or faux personalized, as I like to say. And then you see hundreds, thousands of other buyers piling on, and you see this public shaming of salespeople. Now, I'm not a fan of that, right? I don't think that that's the right approach, but it goes to show the level of frustration that buyers are facing after email and calling and all of these tools have been weaponized and turned against them. And so it's our aim to remedy that by helping salespeople build credibility with verified customer testimonials, have a reputation that they can use in order to open the door using their previous customers as a linchpin to the next deal, which is the premise behind social selling as well. And effectively coming in and saying, right, look, if I've done a great job selling to the VP of marketing at Facebook and the VP of marketing at Amazon, and both of those folks are willing to write me a testimonial, it goes to figure that the VP of marketing at Microsoft might be willing to have a meeting with me as well.
Yeah.
The problem is, how does the VP of marketing at Microsoft know that the VP of marketing at Amazon and Facebook actually did business with me, actually enjoyed working with me, and actually benefited from my solution? He or she does not. And so that is the problem that we're trying to solve, is that there's no credible signal in the market about which salespeople actually have done a great job serving their customers and which ones are just, using, I think you use the term, things that are hackery or tricky or whatnot, right? I mean, that is the thing that is upsetting buyers the most. And we seem to be accelerating towards a world where there's an increased prevalence of tricks that salespeople can use. And it's our view at Bravado. I think it's your view at with the platform that you're building around social selling, that's the wrong approach. We have these tools in order to make us more efficient. We don't have these tools in order to trick customers into opening emails and taking phone calls from people they don't know and having conversations with people for products that they don't want. Right. And I think that's what we're trying to fix.
Yeah, absolutely. Sahil, it's been fascinating. We're at 30 minutes, so time's up. Remind everybody where they can get hold of you and remind people about the Bovada platform as well.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, the website is just bravado.me. And if you are interested in signing up and being among our early kind of private beta users, you can go through and do that there. My Twitter handle is at @svmansuri. That's SVMANSURI. Or you can just shoot me an email, sahil@bravado.co. All of those are completely fine. And in terms of the Bravado platform, it's our humble and exciting mission to try and create a world where there's no more cold emails, no more cold calls, and that the way that you get in through someone's door is by building a reputation, getting a buyer who's already done business with you to credential you, and then be able to use that credibility in order to unlock the next opportunity. So
absolutely.
I guess social selling empowered.
Fantastic. Been great talking to you, Sahil. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Thanks.
You too.
Bye.